Hi, Pottery peeps. You get me today. I'm so grateful for Mac and Savannah, who's been able to do videos. And Mickey is still working on hers, and I believe Kate is going to be next week. And you guys haven't seen very much of Kate's things because both Kate and Sandy have their own kilns in their own studios at their house. And so they take their stuff home and fire them and so forth. You've seen some of Sandy's. And speaking of Sandy, her and I we're in kind of a support group. She fell, I think, a week after, or maybe days after my accident. She actually fell, tripped and fell into her window well. Gosh, she was so lucky, but she was lucky she had her phone on her because nobody was home, and she ended up shattering her T10 vertebrae. And so she's dealing with that. And so we've been texting back and forth and calling each other back and forth and, doing our vent fests and so forth, because she's out of the studio too. And we'll probably both be back in the studio at the same time. But she's doing better now. It was pretty bad there for a while. And, it just goes to show no matter what you're going through, you can find somebody going through something worse. And so I'm always grateful for, it's hard to be grateful, but they always say that if there was a bowl of problems, you would always pick your problems out of the bowl rather than take on someone else's trials. And so anyway, so let's go ahead and get started, and I will start with how I got into pottery. I think I've talked about this before, but I'm dyslexic. I'm also ADHD, but that wasn't diagnosed until I was 50, or just under 50, late 40s, early 50s. Anyway, so school was always really tough for me. I didn't actually finish a book, read a whole book until the end of 6th grade. And it was Beverly Cleary, Beezus and Ramona that got me to love books, and mainly because of the humor that was in them. And so dyslexia and school, any of you who have suffered dyslexia know that school is just a trial. And I basically skated through school, didn't draw a lot of attention to myself, behaved, got passed and so forth, and didn't cause a lot of problems. High school was a little bit tougher. I come from a family of educators. Both my grandparents were teachers. My grandfather a math teacher and my grandmother an English teacher. And I've talked about my grandmother before, who she's my love of reading and writing, and she's got books out there also. Anyway, so in 1983, yes, I graduated in 1985, but in 1983 I had to take an art credit. It was required. And I couldn't draw, I was always been a creative person, but art wasn't my vocation or whatever. And I was told by the art teacher that I couldn't draw. Why don't you take pottery? So I took pottery, and I fell in love with it for day one. First of all, I had the most amazing teacher, Carol Young. I went to Lathrop High School in Fairbanks, Alaska, and she was a hippie. If she wasn't wearing Birkenstocks, she was wearing bunny boots in the wintertime. And then she changed into her Birkenstocks with wool socks and wear those inside. But she was the most amazing teacher, just low-key, no pressure, just the love of pottery that she had just shone through. And I was one of those students that I got on the wheel and the heavens opened up and the angels sang, and there was something inside of me that whispered, this is what you're meant to do. I immediately fell in love with all things pottery, and I just excelled. There's a really great book out there called The Gift of Dyslexia. And I didn't actually find that book until probably my 30s. But I'll put a link to it in the description because it changed my life. People with dyslexia tend to see things in pictures, and we're very artistic. We have a very entrepreneurial spirit, mainly because we like to control our environment. And so a lot of entrepreneurials out there, you'll find, I got blue jays outside my window. I just love this time of year with all the birds. Anyway, if you have a child or you yourself are suffering with dyslexia, I don't actually look at it as a suffering anymore because I read this book and there's so many gifts that come with it, especially when it comes to the arts or being creative. It's just an amazing book. Anyway, so I'll link that in the description. So my sophomore year, I took pottery, immediately signed up for the next course of pottery in my junior year. And by then, my teacher, she was taking my stuff and entering it into adult art shows in town and not letting me know. She would just bring me, the winning ribbon or whatever. And so she was constantly doing stuff like that. And she was such a great cheerleader. She even had me, if I can find it, I'll post it. I was even interviewed by the Daily News Miner there in Fairbanks. And what was really cool about her, I would get detention quite often because I was in the studio too long and I would be late for my other classes. And she would let me work my detention off in pottery after school. So it was kind of a win-win. Anyway, for my senior year, I only had to take 2 classes, and that was English Lit and economics, I believe. Oh, God, I hated that class. And otherwise, I could have graduated as a junior. And so there was no Pottery 3. And so she opened up her free period. And so I got to have her free period. I got the studio or the classroom all to myself for my senior year. And I did graduate early. I graduated in January and then just went to work. From then on, I went to the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I actually went for a degree in the arts, creative writing, because I'd always written, and pottery. Well, the pottery teacher at UAF, I can't even remember his name, was completely different than Mrs. Young. He would show up, tell us what to do, and then he'd leave. And so there was no instruction. I was so excited for that class too, because this is a college level class, and I was just wanting to learn everything about pottery, and I got nothing. And basically I learned from other students. We taught each other. And one of the problems with my first year of college, it seems like the hormones kicked in or whatever. I met my husband and everything was just about him. And we actually got married in 1986 at 19, both of us at 19. And of course they said it wouldn't last and so forth. How long have we been married? Well, since 1986. I think we just had our, 37th or 38th year. I'm not sure. I can't do the math. Anyway, when we got married back in the 80s, late 80s, 86, so mid 80s, it kind of all became about him, getting him through school. He was going to make more money than I would make. So the focus was, me working, him going to school and working, and until we had our first child in 89. And then as a woman, a lot of the times your life, what you want is over. It's all about the kids and the husband and so forth. And so I'm just going to gloss over those years because even when I remember back, I wish I was more present when my kids were little, but we were so poor. And in fact, my husband quit going to school and worked 2 jobs. He worked construction, and then he was a manager for Albertsons, which is a grocery store chain. And so he was gone all the time. I was basically a single parent. And in order to stay home, because I couldn't afford daycare, I did daycare. So for 10 years, I did daycare, and I had all these kids, plus my own kids. I don't know how I survived my 20s. I really don't. That was probably the hardest part of my whole life. And if you're raising young kids, it's a thankless job. I became, my kid's mother or my husband's wife. I lost my identity even. Anyway, during that time, we realized that Mike really needed to finish his degree if we were going to get out of this hole of poverty. I mean, trying to be really creative on how you can take top ramen and make it last a month, different ways that I don't know how we made it. I really don't. Anyway, so he went, he quit the one job because it was killing him to do. He would work at Albertsons until like 11:30 at night. So he was on the swing shifts, and then he would wake up and do construction, be there at 7 and to 3, and then go right to Albertsons. And so that was killing him. And of course, I was basically a single parent, so I didn't have any help. And so he went back to school, quit the Albertsons job, and no, he quit the construction job and stayed at Albertsons. And we just busted our butt, got him through school. And he graduated in 2000, so you can see how many, that was a decade from the time we had our first child. So I have 4 kids, and the last one was born in 95. So 2000 is when things started to change because he graduated, actually got a good paying job. And I had been wanting this whole time to get back into pottery. And he sat me down, he said, it's like, okay, I've graduated. I think you need to go for a degree in computer science. It's like, hell no. First of all, I felt like I'd been in school with him because I edited his papers, helped him out with whatever needed to be helped out with. And I felt like I'd been in school because technically I had been, even though I wasn't sitting in class. And no way did I want a computer degree. That's not me. And so I did not want to go back to school. I didn't want the cost of it and everything, because we were lucky enough not to have any student loans when we graduated. But my youngest was now entering kindergarten, and I said, what I want to do is I want to take a pottery class, one of those continuing your education pottery classes. And I'd been wanting to do one, but they were like $200 back then. And that was like for a 6-week course. And it's like, there's just no way I could spend that kind of money on myself. And finally, he just said, just do it. I'm tired of listening to you whine about wanting to do this. Just go ahead and do it. And so I went ahead and took an evening community class that met twice a week for 6 weeks. And it, again, the very first time I sat down at the wheel, the heavens opened up, the angels sang, light shone down, and this voice inside me just screamed, this is what you're supposed to do. And it was like getting on a bike, through something the very first time, no problems, it's just like everything came back. And I was so happy. And so in the meantime, I was writing books and going down that road, because that was another dream of mine, was to be a published author. And I read a lot. And so I was writing at the same time. But this teacher, Andy Watson, he taught at Timpanogos High here in Utah. And he took a shine to me, and he had his own studio at his house and invited me over to his house. And I did we saved up, and I bought that Artista wheel that's sitting over there in that corner. And I got it for like $400. I think they're about $500 now. I still use it. It's a great wheel to get started on. If you don't want to spend a lot of money on a wheel and a wheel that's going to last, that's a good wheel to start with. And what I like about that wheel is that it's only 25 pounds, so I can move it around and I can take it and demo and so forth. But Andy invited me to his studio, and I got that wheel, so I was throwing pots at my house and then taking these fragile pots to his place, which was about 10 miles away, to be fired. Which was, I always broke a pot. Sometimes I broke a couple pots. And especially when I glazed them, the glaze would chip off or whatever. So I wasn't getting great pots. And then he went and retired and sold me the kiln that I still have, Bab Morta, the old Crest kiln. And he sold me my kick wheel when he retired. And I was in business then, right? Though it wasn't the, writing was still the main goal. And by then, I was getting nibbles and winning awards, and I got an agent and so forth. And then I've talked about that story where I did get published, and I have 25 some odd books out there, and I'll link if you want to check them out. Anyway, in, I think it was 2013. Maybe it was 2000, I don't remember, 2017, I hit the USA Today, and then the pressure really started. And the pressure really got to me. I was still throwing. It was a side hustle. We had the studio in the garage. I was throwing for a place in Park City. Bruce Larrabee has Artworks on Main. I was selling stuff in Park City, and Park City is about an hour away, and that just got to be monotonous trying to get pots up to Park City, and I was just doing too much. And so with as much time as it was taking to write books and the amount of hours I was spending in front of a computer, but anytime I had a problem with my characters or where the story was going or I was stuck, I would just go throw pots and just let my subconscious work it out. And it worked. And so it was my saving grace. Pottery has always been my saving grace. And so when things got really bad and I was doing 18 hours on the computer, 7 days a week, just cranking out the books and just the pressure to get the next one out and so forth. And I was not mentally doing well. And my husband, he's like, let's build you a studio in the backyard. I was also wanting to move back to Alaska because I didn't like it here in Utah. And I think he knew that if I had my own space, anything that was just mine, because, I've never had anything that was mine. Everything's the kids or the husbands or the families or whatever. He says, let's build you a studio. And I don't want to leave my studio now. So it kind of worked where, okay, I can be all right to visit home, and really embrace this studio. And so in 2019, we started building the studio, and it quickly became apparent when I put more time into the pottery, I was happier. My mental health was better. And I'd always sold. I'd never had any problem selling my pottery. But I'd never put any pressure on that either. And my husband, luckily, I put that man through school. I slaved to get him through school. So, the rewards of him having a good job and making good money are mine too, because he wouldn't have that without me. And so my money, the money I make on pottery or even on the books, was always considered the fun money. His pays all the bills and so forth. So I like that. So there's no real pressure other than the fact that if we need more fun money, then I got to sell some pots or sell more books or whatever. So that's nice when I didn't have that kind of pressure and so forth. But when I made the switch in 2019 to look into teaching and making the books the side hustle and the pottery the full time, the stars aligned, the universe shone down. It's like, it's about time you finally figured it out. So that's how we are to where we're at now, in the studio with me teaching. Well, not right now, but we'll get back to it. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, there's so many people that are getting into pottery, and there is a divide. There's always a divide when it comes to a degree in the arts and versus those of us that are self-taught, because I'm basically self-taught. I mean, I had my high school teacher for 2.5 years teach me. And then I had my Andy Watson, who taught me, and he wasn't a hands-on teacher. He was very much go throw pots. You know, you're going to learn more by failing than you will be by me telling you what to do. And so he was very much left me on my own. And if I had a question, I would go and ask him a question. This is before YouTube, you guys. Those of you getting into pottery and now with the access of the amazing potters on YouTube, jeez, I mean, I was learning by reading books, you know, or talking to other potters and that kind of thing. And the bulk of my learning came from doing. So you don't need a degree to be a potter. You certainly do not. In fact, I think this is my own personal opinion, okay? I think for me, not having a degree in pottery and the ceramics, it has opened me up to trying so many different things. Because a lot of times I know with academics, especially like creative writing, because I was gonna, okay, isn't it interesting that when I started college at 18, I went into pottery and I went into creative writing, and that's what guess what? At 18, sometimes you do know what you want to be. At least it was in my case. I didn't have to struggle because that's always been what I wanted to do. But I've seen a lot of people who go and get their higher education, get their bachelor's in creative writing and so forth. They become, I'm going to probably offend some people or whatever, snotty. You know, it has to be this way. There is no doing it this other way, or you have to go down because this is how, you know, I was taught and this is how it has to be. And I have seen some of that, not as much, but I have seen some of that also in ceramics where, you know, you go in for your higher education and so forth, and you tend to do things the way you were taught and not branch out and try different things, to where I see a lot of people who are self-taught and they're trying all sorts of stuff. And that's not everybody. I don't want to generalize, but I have seen a lot of that. Now, in my opinion, if you want to throw pots, you don't need a degree in ceramics. Go and throw pots. If you want to teach like at a higher, like in a high school or then you do need to have a degree. If you want to teach at a college level, then you need to have a master's and so forth. But if you just want to make pots, go make pots. You're going to learn more by making pots. And so that's my advice to you. If you're just starting out, heck, congratulations. You got the whole world. My biggest fear is I'm going to die before I get to try all the different type of things I want to do. Pottery, ceramics is so vast. From raku to slip casting to hand building to wheel throwing to wood firing, gas firing, electric firing. There's so many avenues, you know, that you can go down, and I want to try them all. So without getting this too long, because I can ramble, let me just look over my notes to see if there's anything else that I think I pretty much said it all. But if you calculate how long I've been doing pottery, yeah, I got started in 1983, but there was a big chunk from 1987, basically, to 2000, where I was raising kids. And I'm glad I was able to stay home with my kids. I'm not glad that I did daycare. I wish I had been more present with my kids, but you know, you do what you have to do to get through. And that's the only options I had open to me, to be able to stay home with my kids and also get my husband through school, was for me to do daycare. And so I'm glad I did it on that. And I really, really enjoyed my kids as teenagers. I've always been one of those that was my favorite time with my kids, mainly because the first 10 years of raising kids was hell, dirt poor, and all these kids and me going crazy with no help, no car. So I really enjoyed my teenagers. And I think a lot of that too, I was finally doing some stuff for me. You know, I was writing, which is something I wanted to do. And I'm glad I did it. I'm not glad with the way it got to be. The dream of being published was not the reality of being published, let's say. But pottery has always been there for me. Like even last week I saw my primary care doctor and was updating her on everything. And she goes, do I need to refer you to a counselor, or should we talk about antidepressants? And it's like, no, all I need is to get back in my studio. That's what I need to do, because that has been my savior when it comes to mental health. And I see it in my students. I've seen it in my kids when they come and do stuff in the studio when their mental health is suffering. I firmly believe that if you can do something with your hands, whether it's clay, sewing, woodworking, whatever, gardening, if you can do some sort of mindfulness activity, it really, really does help your mental health. So I'm going to be getting back in the studio, whether the doctors say so or not, because I can't stand it anymore. I've already been thinking of things that I can do that don't require, that just require this, right? So I have plans to do an army of gnomes. I think I can do an army of gnomes, and gnomes make me happy. So look for that coming up soon. In the meantime, you guys go get muddy. I hope you got something out of this. Those of you, like I said, who are just starting out, don't feel like you need to have all this higher education behind you. No, I really do think by learning, by failing, by trying, different things, it's really going to broaden what you can do and open up avenues that I think school can kind of pigeonhole you a certain way, certain types of clay, certain types of firing, certain types of glazes, certain types of pots. I think by not having all of that, nothing against the education, I'd like to actually go in and sit in on some classes. I don't necessarily want the degree, and I don't need the degree, but I would like to maybe sit in. And so I'm always open to, I think YouTube University for a pottery educator or for education is amazing, because you get to see so many different potters and the different ways they approach things. Because I'm a firm believer there's not one way to center. There's so many different ways to center, and the one that is for you is the one that works for you. The different ways of doing things, the different ways of holding your hands, holding your body. There's no one magic way to do it. You just got to get in there and get muddy and do it. And the more you do it, the better you get. Just like with anything else, get your 10,000 hours in. And also, I'll say this thing about selling pottery, because you will get buried in pots. A lot of people don't think that they're good enough to sell their pottery. This is my key on that, because I was one of those for a while. It's like it didn't meet my standards, right? If anybody is interested in buying your pot, you're good enough to sell your pottery, all right? So your pots are good enough. If somebody wants to buy them, let them buy them, because you need to make more space for more pots, all right? So that's my story so far. We'll get over this, and then we'll take the story into another chapter, and hopefully a pain-free chapter for both me and Sandy. Oh, poor Sandy. She was down in October when she had broken her arm and had to have surgery on it. So we were down together with me and my knee surgery. So hopefully we've got the rest this year covered for the rest of it, and we can get into the studio and have fun. Anyway, guys, go get muddy, and I will, I believe Kate's next week, and then hopefully I will see you soon. Okay, bye.